Let me have Ravi, would you come on up? And I'll put you on this side. And I'm going to go ahead and ask Ravi the first few questions because they're questions that I get or have gotten, and this will hopefully give you an idea of the kind of questions that we're looking for, all right? And if you have a question, you can start to make your way there now, all right? Let's see, first question. There are people that I've talked to or heard that they'll say science has always been closing the gap between what we know and what we don't know. And before science became so relevant to our lives and so advanced, people used God to fill those gaps. For instance, very early on when thunder would happen, because they didn't know really what thunder was, they would attribute it to the gods. So people read the Bible the same way. They'll say demon possession. They didn't know what schizophrenia was, or they didn't know what epilepsy was, so they attributed it to demon possessions. And eventually, our knowledge of science will grow to such an extent, it'll close all the gaps, and there is no need for God. How do you respond to that?
I don't know.
Okay, thanks to everybody for coming. That's great.
I asked Joe if I could also make an opening statement so that you know how these questions are going to be answered. And then I will take the gaps of metaphysics and all other disciplines over against a scientific single vision, which is what that proposition is talking about. There's a funny story I often tell of these two guys who are talking to each other, and one fellow says to him, you know, I'm a little bit thirsty, and so I'd like to make a bet with you. I'd like to ask myself a question, and if I answer it, why don't you buy me a Coke? So the guy says, what did you say? You'll ask yourself a question, and if you answer it, I'll buy you a Coke? He said, that's not a bet. He said, no. Then you ask yourself a question, and if you answer it, I'll buy you one. And we'll keep going this way till one of us asks ourselves a question we can't answer. The fellow said, this is the strangest bet I've ever heard of. He said, but since you proposed it, go ahead and begin. So the fellow said, my question to me is this: how does a rabbit burrow a hole deep into the ground without throwing mud onto the outside? He said, that's my question to me. How can a rabbit burrow a hole deep into the ground without throwing mud onto the outside? And he said, my answer is, let's start burrowing from the inside. The other guy says, how does it do that? He says, I don't know, that's your question. I was walking through the Newark airport some years ago. It was about 6:30. I'd taken a long 14-hour flight. I think it was from Bangkok or somewhere. And as I was walking, went to the gate, I looked at the marquee, and it showed a different flight to mine. I was looking for my flight to Atlanta from New York. And so I tapped a lady on the shoulder and said to her, is this going where it says it's going, or is it supposed to be going to Atlanta? She said, oh no, it's going to Atlanta. That's just a previous flight. I said, well, good to know that. So I turned around to walk away, and I heard the patter of feet behind me. And then she tapped me on the shoulder. She said, excuse me, are you Ravi Zacharias? I said, I'm afraid so. Yes, I am. She said, that is absolutely amazing. I never thought you would have questions either. The fact of the matter is, we all have questions. I believe there's a difference between a question and a doubt. A question is probing, trying to unpack, trying to get deeper and deeper into a subject. A doubt sort of becomes a stumbling block in your journey to an answer. I look at a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grid, and I'll give you this and then start the answer to the first question, because I think this is very critical. 1, truth is the ultimate goal in all of our questions and our pursuits. Truth is the most valuable thing in the world. It was Winston Churchill who said in warfare, truth is the most valuable thing in the world. It's so valuable that oftentimes it's protected by a bodyguard of lies. We have to get to the truth. Number 2, how do we test the truth? There are 2 broad theories. One is called the correspondence theory. The other is the coherence theory. When you go into a court of law and a witness is being asked to give answers The attorney is looking for two components here. Are the answers corresponding to reality? And when all of the answers are put together, is there a coherence to these answers? So it is generally acknowledged that there's correspondence and coherence. And then 3, you test the truth by logical consistency, empirical adequacy, and experiential relevance. Is it logically consistent? Is there an empirical way to verify this, or is just an assertion that is not even falsifiable? And ultimately, is there any experiential relevance to this? 1, truth. 2, correspondence, coherence. 3, logical consistency, empirical adequacy, experiential relevance. 4, there are 4 questions you deal with: origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Now, it's very important what I've just said to you. A worldview deals with these 4 subjects. Where did I come from? What gives life meaning? How do I differentiate between good and evil? And what happens to a human being when he or she dies? Origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Now, to get to these, this is the biggest challenge. There really are 5 disciplines you have to pull together, especially in a worldview that's claiming all of the answers are there for these questions of origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. God, knowledge, reality, man, morality. God deals with theology. Knowledge deals with epistemology. How do I get to this? Reality deals with metaphysics. Morality deals with ethics, and man deals with anthropology. So you've got theology, you've got metaphysics, you've got epistemology, you've got morality, and you've got anthropology. All of this brought into that. So as I attempt to answer your questions, remember, this is what I'm actually trying to accomplish: present to you the coherence of the Christian worldview, how it is coherent and consistent with all of the claims that it makes. If you counter that, you have to put your worldview to the same test. Can you really put the answers together with the 5 various disciplines, the 4 questions, the 3 tests, the 2 categories, and the ultimate pursuit of truth? I just wanted you to have that in your background. Now I can go home and you can start asking yourself the questions here.